Greetings, good people. I am Jay Artist Wright, and you've joined another episode of Choice Words, a podcast by Freedom to Choose Schools. Today's episode is about micro schools. What are they, and why are they a growing trend in our country? And I'm so excited to be joined by the founder of the National Association of Black Micro Schools, Nicole Stewart. So, Nicole, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Awesome to be here.
Okay, so let's just jump right in. I think there's something to be said about when we talk about micro schools. A lot of people, especially in in the education sector, have been saying this is kind of the future of education for us. It's an innovative model. It looks more at an individualized level. It's community centered. But I want to hear from you. First and foremost, what is your story? What led you to start a micro school?
So, my story is that I spent a lot of time in the public school system, um, a much more time than I would have liked to, because in my mind, teaching should look different. Teaching and learning should look different for different students. And so, what I was experiencing is children that had trouble learning the way I was told to teach. And I recognize that. And so, in that, I thought that we should be doing things differently. That's very hard to do when you're actually being told what to do, what to teach, and how to teach it. And so I created what I thought. I got together with my some other teachers, my pastor, and some counselor friends that I knew, and we created this school model. And then fast forward a couple of years, I think that was like 2018. Fast forward a couple of years later, COVID happened and micro schools became uh,
Front and center, right?
a trending topic for sure. And I was like, that's it. That's what I created. It's a micro school. And so from that point, the end of that school year, I put in my notice and I started my own micro school. And that's how I started.
And so making this straight. So you were a teacher. How many years did you teach?
Almost 20.
Oh, wow. Wow. So you taught for 20 years and you got into a point, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but was it just kind of like feeling like the students that you were seeing, the way that the curriculum was running just wasn't going in a way? Were you at if you don't mind me asking, was that 20 years in a certain type of school or was it 20 years across different types of schools?
That was 20 years in public education. I taught 2 years at a private school as well.
Okay. All right. No, that's awesome. So I think before we go any further, there's going to be listeners on this that are like, okay, but we need to understand what is the concept of a micro school. So can you give us like the definition? What is a micro school exactly?
Well, if I had to describe a micro school, I'd probably say it's a small, innovative environment that's relationship centered. It's a learning community designed around personalization, personalization for the student, and personalization for the instructor as well. It's a strong culture, a flexible culture. Puts children and families first. That's how I describe a micro school.
Okay. And does it usually operate in a school facility or can it be done at home? Like how do you differentiate a micro school from a homeschool, for example?
Well, it really depends upon the state. If you're looking for a micro school, they're usually inside of a building, inside of a church, in a commercial building. A lot of times they share spaces with other businesses, but they're usually somewhere like that. It's probably a church, more than likely a commercial space. Um, Micro schools and home schools are very similar, and the difference is generally the state is someone who generally tells us that something is a homeschool or a micro school. The reason I say that is because there's rules in different states, and sometimes the rules for micro schools are a little bit more stringent than they are for homeschools. So micro schools can be in homes depending upon the state.
And I think there's also a difference. Like I think a lot of people when we say my homeschools are categorized by like I'm homeschooling my own children, but in a micro school capacity, you're actually educating other kids as well, correct? Not just your own children.
That's right. I educate my own children as well as the children of others. And that's why I say that that it's very similar to homeschooling because often homeschoolers do that as well. They educate their own children as well as the children of people in the community. So we're very similar in that respect.
And I think that that's also so one of the growing trends that we're also seeing is just this agency that's being happening specifically for a lot of our Black parents who have just looked for other alternative options besides the traditional system that they've had, or just wanting to divest from certain systems that they just feel like are not specifically serving their children. But even in this sense of where we have larger models like charter schools, a lot of our charter school founders specifically also send their kids to the schools that they are actually operating. And I think that that's a unique difference because it shows that there's a personal investment there.
Creating these type of schools, we know that Black children, they deserve learning environments that honor their identity and potential. And so in creating the National Association, that is what we encourage our founders to create: safe learning environments where identity is honored, and potential is honored. And with respect to the creators of these schools, they also deserve the freedom to design schools that reflect culture, creativity, and high standards. We support both. We support the children and we support the educators.
That's awesome. And so, why is it powerful for Black students specifically? Because again, there are micro schools, but you've gone out, and I'll the second follow up question is, why make this national? But the first question is, there seems to be an intentionality around Black students and the need to have this on a national scale. Talk to me about why that was important for you.
Well, like I said before, our children deserve learning environments that honor their identity and potential, and that is also safe for them, where they're safe to learn, safe from the school to prison pipeline, safe from being over penalized for small infractions. And so we're creating those spaces. That's what we're doing. We're creating spaces that reflect culture, that reflect high standards. Our children deserve that. Black students deserve that.
Yeah, and I always find this to be a very interesting topic for myself. Our organization is also a national organization. We are an advocacy organization based in 11 regions across the country, and we specifically support Black led, Black founded schools across the board: charter schools, micro schools, home schools. And I had someone ask me recently, why is it important to just focus specifically on Black and Latino schools? And my response to them was, well, because no one else is, you know, and it seems like it seems to be okay, especially when we look at our Black students. The national report card shows that 81% of Black eighth graders are not reading or writing on grade level. And this is a score that's been happening for a while, but I don't really see any other national organizations looking at this and feeling like this is a crisis for them to uncover. So I'm excited to have you on to talk about this, as well as having a conversation with you from my lens as an advocate for the growth and expansion of more schools, because we need more people talking about this. We need more people, and then also we need more people divesting from a system that's just not serving us. And that has been really controversial. I've had a lot of time in the charter school space, and recently we decided we didn't want to just talk about charter schools because, like you said, micro schools are growing, and there are people who also feel like there's just not a one size fits all. And also we want to have, as parents, we want to have access and agency to our own children and be able to share that with others. So this is really an interesting topic that continues to grow. And I wanted to ask you, you launched a national association. What supporter connections are you building, and why is it important to go beyond just your own school?
Well, so as I'm creating my school, I'm looking at the students in front of me. I'm watching them throughout the year. I'm watching them grow. I'm watching them from the time that they walked in the door or they were closed and unsure about this because of their other experiences in school. And I watched them throughout the year. I watched them grow. I watched them open up. I watched them regain agency. And I thought about the 19 students that I was serving and how this would affect our community, in particular, if it was multiplied. That's where the national organization came in. It was like, this belongs everywhere. Our children should be safe while they're learning. And that's what I saw. I saw children who took control of their education, that had, I think that that's where sometimes I think when people talk about the joy of microschooling, I feel like it's a little bit different for us. I feel that the joy and the freedom comes in um, mainly with the safety. And I feel like that's why our children are not, they don't love school. They don't love learning because they're not safe there.
Yeah. We did a national poll last year, and 81% of the people we polled said that racism was a huge issue for their children in school. And yet at the same time, when we look across the board at how schools manage discipline, we don't talk about race. We're not supposed to, racism is not a subject that is as important as your child being able to sit in a seat for, 50 to 90 minutes. Disregarding all of the external factors that may be impeding them from sitting in that seat. And I think that that's a value add that I'm seeing micro schools bring. And again, these are alternative models that are saying there's something fundamentally happening to our Black students when they're in these schools that we no longer want to ignore, um, nor should it be ignored, because no child, regardless of their race, should have to feel unsafe or feel unseen in a school. So I commend you on doing this. What's your vision for the future of education as you look at this?
For the future of education, that's pretty big, right? I Yeah, yeah, it is. I would love to see micro schools in public spaces. I would love to see public micro schools. I would love to see um, charter micro schools. This learning environment is specifically for our population of students, is both prevention and cure, right? You talked about those statistics. Our spaces can cure those statistics. It can plug in those holes for our students. Just the very nature of our schools being small, being very personalized, it can cure, but it can also prevent. We don't have to talk about those statistics years from now because we've taken care of the needs of our children. They need more attention. They need smaller environments. We need to have relationships with the families. And so micro schools are both prevention and cure, specifically for our community. And if we multiply them, if we put them in the spaces where our children are learning, if we create safe environments for them, community centered environments for them, identity centered environments for them, then our children thrive. We're not talking about those statistics anymore. I'm tired of it. When you mentioned it, I was like, if you were talking about any other population of students, this would be a national crisis. Um, it's a national crisis to me. And it is the reason why National Association of Black Micro Schools were created, to just get rid of this. This is not, our children are brilliant. And so, but we're not treating them. So I think also that we lost agency when we stop being in control of our environments. Micro schools are a rebirth of something that worked for our children. We know it worked. We don't have to think about it. And so to multiply these schools in spaces is what we need to do. It's just, you know, it's what we need to do.
I think it's something that is going to come out of necessity anyway, as we start looking at, especially with this current administration and just the directions that they're going with education. The unions will argue that anything outside of a public school system is trying to privatize education, even though charter schools have been public schools for over 30 years. Um, and we also see that everyone is pretty they they don't like the change and innovation that comes with not supporting a traditional public school. It's like anything else is just like, no, that's too nuanced. That's not gonna do. Where's the accountability? It's the first thing you hear is like, where's the accountability? But then they never look back at, well, how are you holding yourself accountable for 81% of eighth graders not being able to read or write on
I
grade
don't
level?
understand it.
Yeah, no, I think it's a farce, and you brought up something that I think you were alluding to before Brown versus Board. We had schools that were designed specifically um, with ethnicity in mind, and then Brown versus Board, we was supposed to be the lead for anti-segregation, and we were supposed to have more schools integrated. And at the same time, we lost a large population of our teachers, educators who were there that were doing things like, it, any small town you go into around this country, you will always still find, even in ghost towns, you'll always still find a schoolhouse in that school and in that environment, right? Because schools were a beacon for those communities, as you mentioned. And when we talk about like our community, the Black community specifically, that's like a part of, we talk about it at Freedom to Choose Schools. That's a part of our economic mobility. But even more so, it's a part of our civic engagement. Like you had to be able to read in order to be able to vote. Um, and so it's just such a unique dynamic that I'm glad to see so much more of us getting into this space in so many ways, because we've got to tackle it from so many different angles. And what you're doing with the micro schools, I think, is seen as unique now, but I'm hoping that it will not be unique. It'll be something that's just a part of every other model that we see, because it is such a value, and we're seeing so much success with it. So I want to ask you. So you've had your micro school now since 2018. Have you had a graduating class yet?
So I did not open my micro school until 2023. We created the micro school in 2018, but it was open in 2023. So we have not seen graduating classes. We work mainly with most of our students are elementary students, but it is a family environment. So when I opened the school, I thought um, that I would only deal with elementary. But as I met the families, they said, we want all of our children with you. So our school became something a little different than what we had first anticipated. But if you're actually serving the community, you have to recognize what the community needs. And so we adjusted based upon the community's needs.
That's awesome. That ability to pivot and be able to, like you said, adjust is something that is not even considered in our traditional system. It's completely rigid. You have to sit here. You have to be a certain way. You got to act a certain way. And if you don't, there's something wrong with you.
With me, I know I always tell people about the fourth grader that I had that was crying because she had to take the writing test. And I told her, I said, "You're an amazing writer." She said, "I know, but I don't." She said, "I know," because she knew she was really great,
That's awesome.
but I don't know how to write the way they want me to write. And it was true. It was true. She was having trouble learning their way. She was a very creative writer, natural. But she was crying that day. And I said, "Don't worry." I said, "You don't have to worry about this at all." I said, "Because the truth is that this is just a test. It won't determine who you are for the rest of your life." And I got in trouble for that. That's another reason. I got in trouble for saying that, but I meant it. I would say it over and over again because she was a brilliant writer, and I believe that that test sort of put a wet blanket on her creativity because she became fearful. She second guessed herself a lot. And I didn't like that. As a teacher, it did something to me because she was brilliant. She really was.
Well, it sounds like that was also somewhat of an inspiration for you too, to just be like, all right, that's it. I'm done. Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, we've had several guests on this show. Most of them have been educators in a former career, and they decided to just go in a different direction. And again, it is such a value add to our community. Education literally is a core value that we often when we're not able to embrace our identity with it, it gets overlooked. And then I think it's unfortunate as well because when we do sit in some of these traditional environments, when we are looked at in those spaces, we're still not looked at as like the educators and the innovators that we've been for ourselves. It's still just again like this cookie cutting model. So this is a really great conversation, and I'm so glad to be talking specifically about micro schools because we have had other guests that have been on that have started a micro school. We've had charter school guests, we've had homeschool guests on. I'm just so inspired by this national movement because it's a movement. It's not just keeping it local. It's about saying, wow, I found something here and how can I replicate this? I'm curious to know what are some of the biggest barriers that you've had to expanding this on a national level?
Um, I think some of the barriers have been um, mindset. I think that when you begin to talk about specifically about Black issues, um, especially in this current climate, I think that it becomes, a conversation that someone wants to have later, not now, right? But the urgency is now. And so I think that that's one of the barriers, actually having the conversation and have people understand what our needs are and that they are actually different. Um, and so that's one of the barriers. The other barrier, of course, is funding. Like every other movement, funding is the wheels on that in that movement. And we've been able to do a lot of things, and there's so much more that there is to do. But that has been something that has kind of we're only 1 year old. We just turned one. We're in our infancy still, but we have gotten a lot accomplished. So those are probably the two things that are the biggest barriers. We have an amazing team that are doing amazing things. So we don't expect there to be many barriers for very long.
That's awesome. And so we had a guest on our show. I don't know if you're familiar with Keisha Young. She runs the Oakland Reach out of Oakland, California. So Keisha was a former educator, mom. She started the Oakland Reach, which is basically they created these learning hubs in Oakland that they grew out of the pandemic and the need, like when schools were shut down, the need to basically have micro schools in a sense of people that would come and teach their kids. She was on our show and she actually has now create an additional model that's basically AI driven, to some degree of like how can we use technology to even further advance what we're trying to do, not only for the students but for the educators and the parents who also need to be a part of this. I'm curious, and I will definitely connect you to because you that's someone you need to know. Her whole model is really interesting. I'm curious to know though, like, do you use AI at all?
So, one of the things that we're developing is a model to actually assess curriculum. We want curriculum to have certain characteristics that are in our schools, right? We want it to honor culture and identity. We want a degree of rigor. So higher order questioning, those kind of things. So we're developing an AI so that many of our school leaders, they use different curriculum, right? So what we're doing is developing an AI that to assess those curriculums, to assess what is being given, to make sure that culture and identity is a part of it, um, that there's rigor in higher order questioning, critical thinking, that sort of thing. And so we're developing an AI that can actually do that for the curriculum, so that we're not going to, we have curriculum that we recommend because it already exists inside of that curriculum. But if they're using another curriculums, we want them to put it through this AI to assess and help them add to it so that those things can be covered.
And let me ask you specifically for someone who may not understand when we talk about culture and identity, what is something that we embed in our curriculum or that you embed in your curriculum that is culturally or identity focused?
So some of the things we do are just very simple. If we are talking about a particular for example, a part of our what we do in my school is entrepreneurship. It's a part of everyday curriculum, and so what we would do is we would talk about entrepreneurship in terms of historical things. So in that, we would teach about Mali, and we would teach about um, Mansa Musa and those kind of things within that curriculum. And so that they get the idea that this is not new for them. This is not outside of their frame of reference, that they are built for business, that it's may not be in their direct family line, but they can see themselves in the culture, that this is something that we've always done. And so that's what we believe builds our students, that they have something to stand on, that they're not starting from zero. And so that is what I mean. That's what we mean about, there's other examples of it, but that's what I mean about identity and culture within the curriculum.
I love what you said. They're not starting from zero because if you look at the traditional American culture and the curriculum that they give, starting from zero is that we are all descendants of slaves. That we had no identity, no culture, no recollection or association with Ethiopia, Nigeria, Ghana, Ivory Coast, like any of these major civilizations that have been around centuries before us, before landing in America. We just started at zero. And I think it's so important to acknowledge our ancestry there. And then there's also something unique about the Black history that we come in that in some cases, we did start from zero. We had to grow from zero. We didn't start at zero, but we had to grow from zero. Yeah, and it's really powerful. It's a really powerful component, and I'm excited to learn more about it. You mentioned two things, Mali and Mata Musa. Talk a little bit more about that for our listeners because they may have been like, "What was that she said?" So, what is that, Mali and Mata Musa?
Well, Mansa Musa was and Mali were is a part of well, Mali in particular, part of Africa where there was a lot of trade, exchange, gold, business being done, money being earned. Mansa Musa was one of the richest people. I like to say I know because we've studied him so much. My kids and I, we say he's the richest person we know, because the thing is that those kind of things, those experiences, knowing who um,
Having
that
a different
right,
connection, relation.
having connection,
Yeah.
yes, it's important
Mhm.
to the kids. It's important for them to be able to call out a name and say, "Hey, this is who I'm going to be like," because it's like them. They can call out LeBron. They can call out, um, you know, almost anybody and say that's who I want to be like. But they can also reach back into the past and say, "Hey, we've been doing this for a while. This isn't new." And so, yeah.
Yeah, I have a funny story that's similar to that. My children, and this is why it's so important for us to learn our history and our culture. from different environments than just being descendants of the slaves. Um, but the movie Hidden Figures, where they honored the mathematicians, like that was, I remember my daughters watching that movie when they were younger, and we're just inspired. And when I tell you, both of my daughters are so good at math, but it was from that. And then what I always see that happens with my children, especially now, is that they get really excited when they can identify someone that's like them, and they know that that's actually a historical figure. So it's not just a fictional character, but it's actually somebody like, wait a minute, this person actually really existed. So there's been a lot of conversations about like their careers based off of what we see in movies, but then even understanding that that's not just fiction. Like that person is actually a real character. That person, not a real character. The person's a real person, a real mathematician, a real hero, right? Um, so I find that really interesting, and I'm sure you have tons of those conversations with your children as well.
One of the greatest things that I've seen in in the school is children asking questions. It's one of the things that I missed because we were always telling them what to think. One of the That was one of the things that I missed. But these children, they ask tons of questions, and I get excited about them. And sometimes I answer them, and sometimes I have them look it up. Sometimes I have them use AI to research. Like, listen, one of the things that I appreciate about AI, both as an educator and a business owner, is that you can go at warp speed
Hmm.
uh,
It's
to
like at your fingertips. Yes.
yes, to actually get
Hmm.
something done. And so I encourage my students to do research using both traditional methods and using AI because it's our future.
And listen, it's not only is it our future, but everyone's doing it. So it's not, it's, anyone who's not doing it is actually falling behind. It's encouraged. It's happening across the board. It's happening in corporate rooms. It's happening in classrooms. And it's not something. And there's so many parameters around it too, so that you're not, doing any type of plagiarism, or doing something that basically isn't allowing you to excel. The reality, though, and this is a harsh and controversial reality that we have to deal with. um, Anything is up for us at this point, right? Like when we're looking at the education system, I can't stand when people want to criticize something new or something innovative, because to me, what they're saying is, okay, so I'm just supposed to be okay and accept what hasn't worked, but not even try to do something different or create something that does work. Because we know what happens when they stay where they are. We see the school to prison pipeline by the time they hit third grade, right? Third grade. We know what happens when a child loses interest and basically goes out in their neighborhoods, or adjoining neighborhoods, to find a way to feel interested or invested or seen. We know this, like we've seen it. So why is it that people are so quick to contend with something new and innovative that's going to still inspire critical thinking and creativity, as opposed to just like, wanting us to the status quo stay the same, right? I mean, it's kind of like it's a rhetorical question, but I just had it just I was triggered to say that as I'm just thinking about what you're doing, and how you're doing it, and it's just this is going to be amazing, and I think our listeners are going to want to hear so much more about how they could do it. So it's one of my final questions I have for you. What's the first step if someone is inspired listening to this and they said, you know what, I'm an educator, I've been an educator, I've got small children now that are going to be going into the school system in a couple of years, what's the first step I need to do to start my own micro school?
So the first step that you need to consider is you need to consider yourself and your community. What does your community need? Is there a need for a micro school in your community? I can already tell you that the answer for that is going to be yes, there's a need, but what type of micro school? The beauty of micro schools is that is that there are a lot of niche schools, right? You can focus on STEM, you can focus on children with unique abilities, you can make an entrepreneurship model. You can do many different things. So the first thing you want to do is focus on what are your strengths and what are the needs of the community. Um, The National Association of Black Micro School Leaders, we provide training, we provide community coaching and strategic partnerships to help leaders launch, grow, and sustain high quality micro schools. That is also one of the things that we like to we want to dispel the myth about when it comes to micro schools. There's accountability in the schools that we're building. We're building high quality schools. We're building schools that address identity and culture issues. We provide progress monitoring so that we assure that our children are actually learning, and we champion innovation. We champion accountability and access. And so those are the things that I would say a founder needs to think about when they are creating micro schools in our community. That their that accountability is not optional.
Hmm. Yes, it's a part of it. Right.
Yes,
I
part.
love that. Well, Nicole, we'll definitely make sure that we share resources with people when this comes out so they can know how to get in contact with you. Is there a quick website or hashtag that you could just share with people right now so they know where to find you?
Sure. Our website is nabml.org. And we also have an amazing Facebook group that you can also join where a lot of information is shared. Um, is shared in that group as well. Just so you know, we have blackmicroschools.com is also launching in January. It is a directory of Black owned micro schools, service providers, curriculum providers, and that'll be launching in January.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so we've got the National Association of Black Micro School Leaders, NABML.org.
Mhm.
And then we have blackmicroschools.com. Is that correct?
Blackmicroschools.com, and that is our directory of microschools.
And Director of My Schools is launching in January. So, listeners, be on the lookout for that. Find out more information. You can also reach out to Nicole through those platforms as well. Nicole, this has been an amazing conversation and such a conversation that's needed right now. These conversations matter because our families are demanding options, and those options look different depending on where we are and the type of students that we have. And so it's so important that you have elevated this. And I love the fact that you're paying it forward. It's not just for your family, but it's for other families as well. So I'm super excited to give you this platform to talk about what you do and for other people to hear what you do and be inspired by it. I've truly been inspired by it. Your story is amazing, Nicole, and I know there's so many more layers to it. I have one final question for you, though, and this is a question that we ask all of our guests. So, for you, Nicole, what would be your choice words for our listeners right now?
My choice words for your listeners would be pay attention. Pay attention to what's going on around you. Pay attention to your children. Pay attention to what they're learning, how they're learning, and who's teaching them.
Yeah, that's powerful. Pay attention, folks. Listen out. You heard it from Nicole Stewart herself, founder of the National Association of Black Micro School Leaders. Thank you again, Nicole. It's such a pleasure meeting with you. And for all of y'all listening, stay tuned until next time.